The bourgeois are going to arm the people. On the day of July 13, 1789, they open the building of the Invalides, where they liberate 30,000 rifles, cannons, powder, ammunition, and distribute these weapons to the poor people of Paris. We will note, for example, that two important Swiss citizens, the banker Pergaud and another banker Delessert, amongst the most incandescent people who have collected guns and who distribute them to people who pass by their homes. You have Buscaret, who is a stockbroker and future member of the Legislative Assembly, who also doesn't go to fight. It is not appropriate for someone of his stature, but hands out guns. The Bastille is taken. July 14th. The king has backed down. Necker has been recalled. The bourgeois class thinks to themselves, we have won. Careful, we have won, but at a great risk. We have armed the plebe. What will they do with these guns? We must take these guns back from the poor. And they found an admirable trick, which will succeed immediately. They had distributed these rifles free of charge to the plebs. We'll buy them back from them for 40 cents. So most of the rifles come back. You understand, these people who had received a gun for nothing. We tell them, if you return the gun, you get 40 cents. Obviously, they return the gun. And as they were afraid that this had given the poor people bad ideas, they immediately set up, as of the very next day, July 15th, what was at first named by themselves a milice bourgeoise, a bourgeois militia, but the word seems too naked, so they chose to change it and call it a National Guard. The National Guard will simply be a substitute army, a palladium of the fortunate to keep the poor quiet. And this National Guard is created in Paris and is also created in the various provinces. As the affair is won, a constitution is made. It was announced that all French males of age became citizens. But the Abbot Sieyès and his friends, who came to power by famously claiming that the Third Estate was everything, and that this everything demanded a voice in national affairs, these same men made a constitution which will divide the French men in two classes. There are those who own property and those who do not. Everyone will be called citizen, just for fun, but there will be active citizens and passive citizens, and the distinction is obviously financial. It is a masterpiece of dark humor to call us a citizen passive, since the passive is the one who does not have the right to vote. So in short, only the possessors or semi-possessors, those who have money, will have the right to vote. This is their constitution. In addition, the Loi Chapelier, the Chapelier Law of 1791, namely, it is forbidden, under penalty of imprisonment for workers, employees as we used to say, to join together to, and I quote, bid for their work. Prohibition to join together to bid for their work. That is to say, prohibition is made to the workers to unionize and defend their interests. July 17, 1791, the passive citizens interfered in what did not concern them, when that day, after the king reneged on his oath and fled in attempt to assemble an army and descend on Paris in a storm of iron and fire, leading to his arrest in Varennes, the masses of Paris had gathered in order to ask for the destitution of the king. There were about 100,000 people who were gathered on the fields of Mars. It was a beautiful Sunday. Many had come with their families to sign on a register where the Cordelier Club, who represented the far left, had deposited a petition for the destitution of the king. Lafayette, commander-in-chief of the National Guard, the bourgeois militia, and Bailly, mayor of Paris, will fire without warning into the crowd on these people who were peacefully demonstrating. It is an important date, this July 17, 1791, that should be written in bold red letters in the history books, at least as big as July 14th, 1789. On that day, July 17th, 1791, without warning, the people were fired upon because they were meddling in matters that apparently did not concern them. They, as passive citizens, had dared to meddle and petition for the destitution of the king. We will never know exactly how many people were killed, probably close to 1,000. This is a lesson for the little people who want to have a voice in the management of national affairs, which belongs only to the property owners. In short, the constituents are Voltairians. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about Voltaire in the religious sense. We talk about him all the time through his views on religion, but we forget that Voltaire had a certain political doctrine, and Voltaire had stated the following doctrine. Open quote. A well-organized country is one in which the few make the many work, are fed by them, and govern them. Close quote. That is the morality of the parasitical bourgeois class, and the morality of the majority of the notables at the Constituent. There was one gentleman who disagreed, a little lawyer from Arras, whose name was Maximilien de Robespierre. He was alone at the Constituent Assembly making protests. Where did he come from? He was a boy who had no luck. He lost his mother when he was very young. When he was 9 years old, his father disappeared. They say he went to Munich to die. We don't know. It is believed that he left with a woman. Nevertheless, this little 9-year-old Robespierre is the head of the family, with 2 sisters and a little boy called Bonbon in the family, whose real name is Augustine. The luck of our Maximilien de Robespierre is a paternal uncle who will obtain for him a grant from the Bishop of Arras. It is with ecclesiastical money that he will finance his studies. He studied at the at, at the Collège Louis le Grand, was a good student and a good worker, and wanted to study law. And at 23 years old, he will take over, after an interval, the succession of his father, who had been a lawyer in Arras. We have some drawings of this very young Robespierre. He has a doll-like figure. At 23, he looks like a kid. His eyes are a bit candid. He has a snub nose, like Talleyrand, and he is not particularly mean or nice. In fact, he is any kind of person. He is a boy who is not unsociable. He goes to bars and balls. He dances and turns the madrigal like everyone else. But we make fun of him a little bit because he has a passion. He constantly talks about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, not the Rousseau of the Confessions, nor the new Héloïse, but the Jean-Jacques of the social contract. He is crazy about Jean-Jacques. He lives and breathes Jean-Jacques. He has seen him in person and tells everyone about it. He was born in 1758. Rousseau died in 1778. In 78, Robespierre was still a student in Paris. Rousseau was not far away in Hermonville, at the home of the Marquis de Jardin, as you know. And the little Robespierre had asked him for an audience. Well, Jean-Jacques Rousseau had accepted to see the boy. I don't think he had said anything sublime, but he had spoken to him. So Robespierre said, I saw and spoke to Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Well, people smiled a little, but people will smile less when they see a certain pamphlet, as people say today, that Robespierre had spread at the end of 1788, when he was a candidate to the General Estate, as a candidate of the Third Estate. I will read to you this text. I will read it to you. This text is very short. The essential sentence I will read to you slowly. It is from Robespierre in 1788. Open quote. The greater part of our fellow citizens, the greater part, is reduced by indigence to that supreme degree of abasement where man, occupied only with surviving, is incapable of reflecting on the causes of his misery and on the rights which nature has given him. This is dangerous. To ask that, to tell people you will reflect on the causes of your misery. You are exploited. You are unhappy. Become aware of it. You understand that this was terrifying and terrible to both aristocracies. So a man who says things like that gets spotted immediately. And he goes even further. He will pronounce a terrible word on the platform of the assembly. He is going to speak of hypocrisy. You hear me? Hypocrisy. About the Declaration of Human Rights. Why is that? The Declaration of Human Rights, voted unanimously, had for main article, you probably know it, it is often quoted, all men are born and remain free and equal in rights. It was the great sentence, the first article of the Declaration of the Rights of Humans. All men are born and remain free and equal in rights. So Robespierre says, we all voted for this, but what application do you make of it? Equality? I don't see it. Equality? These men who are all equal, then why did you choose to distinguish the French in two groups, the active citizens and the passive citizens, according to their wealth? Are they all free? There are also black citizens, because France still had at this time some colonies, especially in the West Indies. Many had asked for the abolition of slavery. The colonial lobby that was extremely powerful in the Constituent Assembly, with notably Lafayette, amongst others, who absolutely opposed the abolition. Hence, the Constituent Assembly maintained slavery. Robespierre said hypocrisy to say that all men, since the black men you want to leave in slavery. And then there are other slaves. They are those workers to whom you forbid to join together to defend their wages. So I say the word hypocrisy because neither equality nor freedom are respected by you. He also understood what the Federation truly was. If you read our friend Michelet, you see, and this has been repeated a lot since, the Federation is the great French national holiday. It takes place on July 14, 1790. The National Guards from all the regions of France gather in Paris. According to Michelet, France became aware of its unity. It is said that patriotism was born on that day. In reality, it is not a question of patriotism. What is it about? The first armed congress of the bourgeoisie. It is the National Guards who keep the peasants and workers quiet, who have gathered in Paris to say, we are the masters, we have the weapons. And Robespierre will say this, you want to divide the nation into two classes, one of which will be armed only to contain the other. It is to the wealthy classes that you want to transfer the power.